Give me the number too. Well, welcome everyone to tonight's Wisdom Dharma Chats. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, it's my great pleasure to welcome Professor John Dunne to the Wisdom Dharma Chat. We did probably one of the first Dharma Chats ever during COVID. I think it was maybe the second episode. So welcome back.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
It's been too long. And I'll do a short introduction. So Professor John Dunne is the Distinguished Chair in Contemplative Humanities, an endowed position created through the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. John works on Buddhist philosophy and contemplative practice, especially in dialogue with cognitive science. In addition to serving as a core faculty in the Center for Healthy Minds, he's the fellow and former board member of the Mind and Life Institute and a contributor to Mind and Life Europe and an academic advisor for Rangjung Yeshe. I guess most importantly, he's a wisdom author and instructor.
Is that?
So thank you.
Yes, that's definitely the most important.
For us anyway. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, wonderful to be here on this in your new New York digs. I haven't seen this space before. It's really great.
It's our new studio, and this is the first time we've done this sort of like a table thing. So this is new for us as well. But the reason you're here is we're actually filming a course.
Yes, indeed.
And that course is based on these books that we published over the last few years, and that's the science and philosophy in the Indian Buddhist classics. And this was really a heart project of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and basically it was His Holiness's effort to share the Nalanda tradition with the world. And so then the office, in talking with His Holiness office, they really wanted us to do a course based on the books. And the idea of that course is to make these texts even more available to the wider public. So thank you for being a part of that course. And so I think tonight we can talk a little bit about that course and these books. Of course, you were the translator and you introduced volume
With Dechen Rochard, yes.
With Dechen Rochard.
Yeah.
And On the Mind, volume 2, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah, so Dechen did the translation and you did the introduction.
We co-translated and I wrote the introductions, yeah.
So we can talk maybe a little bit about the mind tonight, but I want to start with the Nalanda tradition. So I thought we could get in our time machines and go back.
Wouldn't that be amazing if we could? I mean, it's such a spectacular, physically, such an amazing place, even in itself. It's a little drive. They're in Bihar, which is, it's a bit of a rough state in India, one of the poorest states. But when Bodh Gaya itself is really amazing, just to be there where the Buddha is said to have attained awakening. But then not that far away is first of all Rajgir, where the perfection of wisdom texts were taught. And then not far from Rajgir is Nalanda, this ancient university, one of the greatest ancient universities that existed from about, probably starting around the 5th century, like we don't know for sure, I think. And then tragically being sacked and burned in the 12th century, actually. But it had started to decline. And interestingly, as Buddhism was crossing the Himalayas into Tibet, around that same time, you start to see the first signs maybe of decline in Nalanda. But it really hit its height 7th, 8th, 9th century. It was really quite strong. It just started to drop off toward that time when Buddhism was reaching Tibet. And it was an amazing place. I mean, it's just physically, as I said, amazing. Probably more than 250 acres in its actual size. We don't really know, because only about 50 acres have been excavated. But it was truly a university. It was a Buddhist university, but that didn't mean it was just Buddhist. Right? So you've been, yeah. I mean, as you can see, like it was sort of laid out in a modular fashion. It looked like there were sort of different, almost, I don't know, in the Tibetan tradition, we have in the monasteries, these kangsen, which are based on regions. We're not sure how the arrangements were made at Nalanda. But there were probably as many as maybe 10,000 students in about 1,500 faculty, we could call them. And to get into the monastery, you had to pass an exam.
Well, I was gonna talk a little bit about that. So it's quite incredible when you go there and you start to imagine that this is like one fifth of what you see is one fifth of what was there, and
Exactly.
it seems like a small city in a way. It's
Yes.
huge.
And it was definitely a small city. In fact, it had a lot of lands attached to it. It had many land grants that had gone into it because it had to, part of the reason it became a target later is that there was some degree of wealth that had accumulated because it was also, there was commerce happening around the monastery. There were lands that the monastery had been granted by various rulers that they need to cultivate. And yeah, there was a lot going on. There was an enormous library, a library
Yeah.
that it was said it burned for months when it was finally sacked.
Nine stories, maybe. We don't know, but
We don't
something like
know,
that.
but yeah,
Yeah.
but yes, and certainly the texts, the amazing range of texts that we believe were present in Nalanda is just astounding.
Like over maybe 100,000 texts.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I would say yes,
Yeah.
certainly, yeah.
So as this great university and library was coming to its end, fortunately, some of that wisdom was being saved by crossing the Himalayas into Tibet. I want to talk about the exam to get in because I'm fascinated by that. So imagine, because I can imagine it was like that. We'll paint the picture and then we can say, imagine we had to do this to get into our universities, right? So, the way I know this is from reading the biographies of, masters from Nalanda. So
Yes, yeah.
say Maitripa, right? You read a biography, I'll just pick one, Maitripa, right? So you read his biography and you learn that, and often it's this way. He was
And
a
he's quite
great,
late. Yeah, he's like,
yeah, 1,000.
yeah, around,
But
yeah.
with Naropa, and yeah, it's going to fall soon after.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But you've got this guy who was or this great master, I should say, not just a guy. This great master who, when he was 11, he knew all the Vedas. He was a master of the non-Buddhist literature, right? So they set these teachers up as masters of the non-Buddhist literature. And then I think he travels to the Northern Gate. So there's like
The four
the
gates.
four gates of the university, and he
Yes.
goes to the northern gate. And who meets him there? It's said is Naropa meets him there, right?
Is that right? Oh, I had
Yes,
forgotten that part of
yeah.
the story.
He says Naropa, and then Naropa he debates Naropa to try and get him, and he actually loses. So again, this is the Buddhist Madhyamika destroys the Vedic
Right. Yes,
practitioner, right?
once again.
Yeah, once again. And so Maitripa is then, and then but they still let him in somehow. I don't know how that works. You fail the test and you still get in. And
Well, there was a test to also be like a faculty member.
okay,
So
yeah.
maybe that's part of the story.
Yeah.
I actually don't remember that story.
Well, it goes on because this is what intrigues me. So he gets in, and of course he's studying Nagarjuna with Naropa because he's learning emptiness, Madhyamika, these sort of things. But later you read in the biography, then he goes and studies with the Eastern gatekeeper, Ratnakarashanti.
Oh, who was sort of, yes,
And
yeah.
he's learning Yogacara.
Right.
He's teaching him Yogacara.
Ryogochara Madhyama Ramana Karashanti is a little hard to pin down.
We
Yes.
maybe can get into that.
Yeah.
But what intrigues me, so this shows me two things, right? Straight away about what this intellectual landscape was like. So one, we have debates.
Yeah, you had to debate to get in.
Yeah.
You had to debate to be a faculty member. And they say that there were two Chinese pilgrims who went during the 7th century, and a lot of what we know is from them, Xuanzang and Yizing. And they said the admission rates were quite low.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was hard to get
It
in.
was hard to get in.
And people would
Even though there are maybe
around the boat.
8,000 in that time, probably maybe 5 to 10,000. We don't really know monks. And just, yeah, people would come from all over South Asia. Remember then, the kind of, sometimes we talk about the Sanskrit cosmopolis, the place, the extent to which Sanskrit spread, just like Latin. And, the great Sanskrit grammarian, Panini, was from Afghanistan,
Wow.
right? And those enormous Buddhas were in Bamiyan, right? There were Buddhist monasteries in Afghanistan. There were Buddhist monasteries in Pakistan. There was even a university in what would be modern-day Pakistan, a Buddhist university. But most of this was like Nalanda was the crown jewel. There were other monasteries that were like that, but Nalanda was certainly the crown jewel. So from all around, as far as we know, all around the extent of that kind of area that Buddhism spread to, but also where Sanskritic learning spread to, where, the classics of Sanskrit, not just the Buddhist classics spread, including Indonesia. Remember, the island of Java
Java.
was right a Buddhist tantric, mecca, so to speak. At that time, that changed obviously.
Well, actually, at the same, not long after, like what we're talking about with my trip, a teacher is going to Java, right?
Yes,
To get
to get teachings from Suvarnadvipa, whose name
Exactly.
actually basically means Java. I mean,
Oh,
the
really?
the Golden Island. Yes,
So
yeah.
he's going to the Golden
Dharmakirti Suvarnadvipa. Yeah, yeah.
to learn. So it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, well, I mean that whole region was, yeah, it was the borders that we have now don't really tell us much about the actual extent of the learning and of this kind of, you might say, the what Nalanda really represented and what it was sustaining for so many centuries. I mean,
Yeah.
when we say, oh, it lasted, from 5th to 11th century, it's a little, I think our time span, with the United States is,
Yeah, that's
I mean, when you think about it, especially here in the United States, that's more than twice as long as our own political system has lasted. So well beyond.
it's the times, and so the change over that time.
Was, as far as we know, probably quite significant.
Yeah.
But it was really rooted in a series of scholars. And when His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks about the Nalanda tradition, and of course the idea is like these books are meant to elicit, the key concepts of the Nalanda tradition, the key debates, the crown jewels, so to speak, of that tradition textually. But then there were also philosophers who were the crown jewels of that tradition, who are called the Six Ornaments. So you had, and our viewers are sure going to be familiar with these names, but you had Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, right, who are said to be the father and child of Madhyamaka, right?
Yeah. Who actually would predate Nalanda, but
They would predate Nalanda, exactly. But they are, so when we talk about the Nalanda tradition, it is these six ornaments form the philosophical core of that tradition. Just like in Western European contexts, as universities were emerging, you had the classical Greek texts, for example. Even though they were long dead, they were still very important for that tradition. So, and none of these, except for possibly one of them, none of these scholars were probably actually really present at Nalanda. So there's Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, who are, the anti-metaphysicalists, as the Madhyamakas, those who critique the notions of fixation on reality. And then there are Sangha and Vasubandhu, whose main role, who are said to be half brothers, right? Their mother was a nun, but then gave up her vows because she was so worried about how the Dharma was going, and then gave birth to her two different sons who became.
Quite a contribution.
What contribution, I have to say. She must have, you wonder what she was teaching them from the cradle. But
Exactly.
so Asanga and Vasubandhu, who really are especially responsible for the kind of phenomenological turn, which we describe sometimes as Yogacara, or the mind-only school, Chittamatra. And then Dignaga and Dharmakirti, who are also connected to that school, but then take that kind of metaphysics and the phenomenology, and then they connect it with, in a sense, you might almost say, like cognitive science. I mean, they're really trying to do a very finely grained account about how does perception work, how does thought work, how does language work. And you can see a kind of progression from these three kind of phases of the development of Buddhist philosophy that then become the key for Nalanda, the education in Nalanda, the textual education, the education in ideas. But of course, education in the Buddhist context and in Nalanda as well meant a lot more than that. It's not just reading texts. It's not just studying the great philosophers.
And so who was the one that would have been at Nalanda, we think, of this?
Probably Dharmakirti.
Dharmakirti.
Yeah, we believe. It seems like, according to some accounts anyway, he was in Nalanda. But we really don't know for sure.
One of the, and the other thing I was thinking is that the Matripa, how he studied, Madhyamaka with Naropa, but then Yogacara or whatever it was with Ratnakara Shanti, it seems as though one of the other things about this institution is that there could be different views side by side.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So it wasn't so like you might, if you were into the Tibetan tradition, you might imagine that you went back to Nalanda and there was only Madhyamikas there, right? But that wasn't the case.
No, not at all.
And so there's sort of like this intellectual diversity there also.
Oh, there was tremendous intellectual diversity. And in fact, they weren't just teaching Buddhist texts or Buddhist ideas. They were also teaching non-Buddhist philosophies there. They had faculty members who were teaching the Nyaya system
Yeah.
and the Vaishnaya and the Vaisheshika system. They had, I believe, faculty members also teaching what we call Mimamsa, the Mimamsa system. So these are kind of competing philosophical systems that were in not just in conversation, but were really competitors with Buddhism, actually, and with Nalanda. But they thought it was very important to bring in those different perspectives, because part of the education is not just, learn our view of things, and not just learn somebody else's view of things, but bring them into dialogue with each other.
Yeah.
Right? Because that kind of learning it's no longer just I know the text, but actually I understand the text. So that's that process, the key process, like the two key processes for education really in the Buddhist context are what we call the three kinds of wisdom, which you know really well, right? The wisdom that comes from learning or literally hearing, because often this is about text being recited. The wisdom that comes from reflecting on that text. And then the wisdom that emerges from when you're reflecting. One way I think about that is you can have, let's say you're trying to deal with a really difficult concept, like the idea of emptiness, for example. What is this idea that all things lack any kind of fixed absolute identity, any kind of fixed essence? And one goes through the arguments, of which there are many, but maybe we choose the argument, for example, one of my favorites, of course, is the royal reason, they call it, right? The tendril reason, right? The reason by way of interdependence, which is great, right? Because if two things are related to each other. If you have two things that are related to each other, let's say the two cups are like in relationship to each other, right?
Yep.
Then in order for that to work, they have to be different. So you have to be able to identify each of them as different things. But if they're totally different, then how can they be in relationship, right? But if that means they're not different, they're the same, then there's no relationship, because there's no relationality between a thing and itself, despite what some would claim. So on this account, then
then people might have been in Nalanda.
Yeah, exactly. They might have. So on this account, like, to make sense of relationality is to let go of the idea that you can pin down what that thing is. In order to be in relation, in a sense, to be related is to let go of being yourself.
Yeah.
In a certain way.
Relata almost have to have a certain vagueness to them in a way.
They have to, you could put it this way, if you have a perspective which is, you're asking what's their identities, then you're assuming a modality of analysis which is going to make the relation fall apart.
Yeah.
If you assume a mode of analysis which asks what's the relation, how are they related, then you're going to lose their identities.
Mm-hmm. You can only have one.
So exactly. So you can talk about the relationality, but then you start to lose track of what exactly are in relation.
Yeah.
Or you can talk about the things themselves, but then you lose track of their relationality. So that's one way to think about the idea that if something is, another way to say it is to specify, what a cup is in itself, you always end up talking about something else. It's always related to something else. The way Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Buddhist teacher, used to put it was, the self is made of non-self elements. The cup is made of non-cup elements. To be what it is, in order to describe what it is, we say it's, it's a bunch of atoms, or it's some porcelain, or it's, a top and a bottom and a handle. We can't describe the cup without talking about other things. So that's another way of understanding that reason, the idea that to be empty of a fixed identity, that doesn't mean things don't exist at all, but to be empty of a fixed identity is to be, in a sense, full of an interdependent identity. But that interdependence requires that this thing is not fixed in a non-perspectival, if you like, an identity that's just given with itself.
What does an interdependent identity mean? It just means you're describing something through relations with other things, or?
Yes, I think that would probably be the best way to put it. Yeah. I mean, I think this is part of what inspired Calder Rovelli's, interpretation of quantum physics. And when he told me one time that we've done a couple of things together, and he basically said people had, because he knew I was a Buddhist, scholar of some kind, and he said people repeatedly told me to read Nagarjuna, read. And I said, you're crazy, and it's true. He's not really like the sort of spiritual type in an obvious. I think he actually is, but not kind of at first glance. And then he did, and it completely blew him away. I think precisely for this reason. It's the idea that if we have, to the extent we have identities, we only have interdependent identities. But if you try to push that, it's going to fall apart too,
Yeah.
right? Interdependence is not ultimate either.
And that pushing that and it falling apart is what emptiness is.
Yeah,
Right?
emptiness is exactly, yes.
So emptiness is what you discover when you look deeply in at the identity of something. Can we say that? When you look
Yes,
deeply into
yes.
the nature of
When
the
you try to
identity of
find what
something.
a thing, when you
Yeah.
try to, what can I put my finger
Yeah.
on, so to speak? What is this? What can
Yeah.
I point to?
And it's not a discovery of the lack of its identity, just the way its identity exists as a relational thing. Is that right?
I would, that's interesting. I don't, why would you don't think it's a discovery?
Well,
I see what you mean. You don't find a lack.
yeah. So if you emptiness is what you discover when
Oh,
you
you're
look
being
deeply into
very
the nature.
subtle.
Well, I don't know. I'm just following your line of thought, but maybe I got off track. So,
No.
but
I'm
yeah,
kidding. Yeah.
yeah. So emptiness is
No,
what,
that's right. You know, so one of the metaphors also is non-findability,
yeah,
right? So if you found nothing,
yeah,
then you would have found something.
for sure.
So if what I find is then absence,
Yeah,
now I do know what the thing is, which
yeah,
is it's ultimately nothing.
yeah,
But that's not emptiness. Because even if you then say, well, okay, what it really is nothing,
yeah,
then what you do in this process is you ask, well, what's nothing?
yeah,
And the only way you can specify what nothing is
yeah,
by saying, referring to something,
yeah.
right? It's the And so, I mean, how we got here is is
Pretty fast.
yes. You know, I've been driving here like mad on the West Side Highway trying to get down here in the holiday traffic. But how we got here really is like that's the process of learning and then reflecting,
Yeah,
right? And so you go through those arguments, like you take that argument from interdependence, and then there's a kind of like a moment where it goes, and this can take a while. Like, you know, you learn the argument, you understand the steps of the argument, and then you think about it, you reflect on it. So that's the second kind of wisdom. The first kind of wisdom is you really get it, you know what you know what we're talking about. You read the text, you get the commentaries, you know your teacher talks to you, and then you start to think about it. And debate, by the way, is one of the ways to do that, right?
yes,
So that was one of historically, and of course the Tibetan tradition picked up that Nalanda style and has continued it to this day in an amazing way. But debate around those, especially formed by the texts of those six great philosophers, but not those texts only. And then also there's some really later very important figures maybe we'll talk about, like Ratnakara Shanti.
yes,
Uh, but then also the non-Buddhist texts, right? And so you engage part of the way you sort of ask, okay, what does this really mean? Not just what the words are, but like what is this pointing to? That is through that process of reflection, right? Because remember when we talk about the Dharma, like you know, there are the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. There's the Dharma at a kind of conventional level is the books
yeah, yeah.
and so on, but the actual Dharma is the realization.
Dharma is the realization of an Arya, no?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, it's really understand, and then kind of by analogy, it's also our own understanding. Like to the extent that we're getting it, that's really what the Dharma is about. It's not just reading the books; it's actually coming to that experiential moment, and then you get that aha, like, oh,
yeah,
I get it. For me, that's the paradigmatic moment when you move into the meditation, right? And so that's the difference about this style of education, I think, compared to a lot of what we do. Well, these days we're trying to incorporate contemplative practices into education, but that was key, of course, for Nalanda, like the capacity to take that sort of aha moment and, in a sense, rest the mind in it, allow it to flavor the mind, to maybe even focus on that moment itself as a moment of experience. So that was really key, but that also then was. You remember, this is there were actually some lay people studying, and I think there were some lay teachers, like non-Buddhist lay teachers at.
In Nalanda, there were lay people and lay teachers.
Yes, I
Okay.
believe so,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. Uh, and not many, but there were some.
Yeah.
And, you know, they taught like not just, they also taught mathematics and astrology and medicine. And so they were teaching, you know, linguistics/grammar. All of that was being taught as well. And I think some of those teachers were not necessarily ordained people, but everyone, whether ordained or not, was living by, you know, an ethical code.
Yeah, actually,
Because part of education was also you had to have, you know, so we have the three kinds of wisdom and then the three trainings, right?
yeah, yeah.
In ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So it was not just to sort of, sit down and read a book. It was a lot more than that.
Yeah, and it's true because in the Nuntas, in the biographies, the people who are entering into to train in Nalanda, they're not already ordained because they might be,
Yes,
Maitreya was he wasn't a Buddhist
he
even.
wasn't even a Buddhist yet.
So he
Yes.
comes in and then later he takes ordination.
Yes, so
So
that's true
that
too.
that
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sort of shows that there has to be lay students at least.
yes, at least, yeah.
And so this, I want to get back to this three modes of learning, the Tosam Gom. How do you translate that? Because I was wondering, you said that there's like there's listening, right?
There's listening or
And then there's
literally listening, but it just means learning,
yeah,
learning the
learning.
words, so to
Yeah,
speak.
learning. So going to class. So
Yeah,
we may go to Nalanda, we go
reading
to
the
class,
books,
right?
reading the
And
text.
then we walk around the campus and we're contemplating, right?
Maybe you're walking around, maybe you're sitting quietly.
Okay.
Maybe what you're doing is, in one style is you read a little bit and you put it down and you think.
And this is what do you call this contemplation?
That, yeah, contemplation or
Yeah.
reflection.
And then you can have aha moments at this point as well, or is this
Yes.
later? Like, and then
So
what's the third one? How do you translate?
they're basically, you could say, aligning with two different styles of practice.
Yeah.
So in this process, you could say there are kind of two different ways of talking about that wisdom that comes from meditation.
Yeah. So you call it meditation.
So
Okay.
yeah, so the idea here is that and I call it meditation.
Good.
Yeah,
That's what
because
me too.
it's a meditative state, right? You're doing bhavana, you're gom in
Because a
Tibet.
lot of people want to, and this is what I wanted to get to. A lot of people sort of want to put almost the cross your legs, close your eyes to one side, and call bhavana gom as like, what do they translate as like gom? In Tibetan they always use the
Habituation.
habituation, something like that. And it's sort
Yeah.
of like I imagine when we went to Nalanda, there's definitely people close their eyes, cross their legs, doing
Oh yeah.
meditation.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
an important part of
That was an important, well, yeah, because there's the three trainings.
Sila Samadhi Prajna.
Yeah, exactly. In ethics, concentration, and wisdom, you can't get wisdom if your mind isn't sufficiently clear
For sure.
and stable, and you can't develop that kind of contemplative mind if it's really chaotic. So you need an ethical lifestyle that helps you develop that.
Yeah.
So those three kind of work that way, and they each kind of cycle through each other, right? If you get more wisdom, that helps your meditation and your ethics, and so on and so forth.
Samadhi is
But
that.
but
Oh, you
yeah,
go.
well, I was just going to say, so when you think about that meditation,
Yeah.
some of it is like you're not even meditating. So for sure, they were also just doing practices to cultivate stable, clear minds, right? So they're doing
Yeah.
what we could call shamatha style practices, other kinds of practices. Certainly tantric practices started to come into Nalanda. We know that, and so they're doing maybe like a Vajrasattva practice just for purification and so on. But eventually, the kind of meditation we're talking about that emerges out of the, learning, reflecting, and then the wisdom of meditation.
Yeah.
That's, I think the two are, one of them is, in a way, you can think of this as what's the role of philosophy? Is it in a sense to prove something, to to produce a thought in your mind, to produce like an idea even,
Yeah.
or is it to wipe out all the ideas?
Depends. Like just the general, my thinking of philosophy is just slowly thinking through something is what in the West we would normally think of
Yes.
philosophy as carefully going through an argument. But here in Buddhist, I guess you're asking in a Buddhist context, right?
Yes.
And so what is the point of philosophy? Well, some people will say, well, Nagarjuna is trying to destroy metaphysics.
Right.
Some people say Nagarjuna is trying to articulate the perfect metaphysics, right?
Exactly.
Through negation.
So you just got the two versions here.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, so you passed. Yes, you could come through the gate. As if I would be a gate holder at Nalanda, but no, not so sure. But so yeah, so one way to think about it is that there's a kind of, so what's like the target state of wisdom in a way, right? So one version of that target state of wisdom is complete non-conceptual, non-dual awareness, right? Which is not just being unconscious at all. It's being fully aware, but not aware of something as an object, not aware, for example, of emptiness even as an object, as opposed to an interpretation which says to go from reflection to meditation is to take the very
Got
concept
it.
that you've been learning and reflecting on, and to focus on that as a mental object,
Mhm.
and then produce an experience that, in a sense, is the experience induced by that concept. So one of them is undoing concepts, and the other is actually, in some sense, sort of realizing concepts, making them truly real to yourself experientially. And that second version is in Dharmakirti's work. So he's one of the six, right?
Yeah.
He had a whole. When if we're having the right kind of wisdom that comes from meditation, we get what's called yogi prachaksha, right? Yogic perception.
Yeah.
And Dharmakirti's version of yogic perception, he said, let me tell you what it's like. It's like if someone who's lovesick thinks again and again of their lover and then sees them, like,
Visually?
yeah, like has,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're there, actually there. They have a perception. So they go from the conceptual, thinking, memory, thinking, and then they have what for Dharmakirti would be a non-conceptual experience of that induced by the thought.
Okay. Can we slow this one down? Because this is quite odd, actually.
Okay.
So, like, this is yogic pratyaksha, so this is yogic direct perception, right?
Correct.
And normally, that's relied upon the senses. Normally perception, oh, depends. We can get tricky here.
Well, there's mental perception.
There's mental direct perception,
Correct.
which is what's an example of mental direct perception?
Uh, so depending on how
Some
you,
people say memory, right? Because it's through the force of experience.
well, no, memory is not is conceptual always.
Yeah, but anyway, we won't go down that road.
Yeah, memory is always conceptual. But
Always conceptual, but there's
yes,
a common locus for Tsongkhapa. We don't need to go down this road.
we can go down that road if you
There's a
want.
common locus between conceptuality and direct perception for Tsongkhapa, no?
This is in Dharmakirti too, actually.
Okay.
It's not just memory, it's that all concepts are mental events.
Mhm.
And as a mental event, the aspect of your mind that is presenting that to you is a perception.
Mhm.
But it's interpreted as
Yeah.
something, it's not interpreted as a mental event, it's interpreted as referring to something out in the world.
Yeah.
So this is what's called, in the cognitive science, we refer to this as cognitive fusion, is one of the terms they use for it.
So let's stick with the thing you brought up that you can go from. So we normally think of concepts as something mental.
Precisely because the concept is a mental event.
Yes.
If I say, think of a beautiful bowl of strawberries
Yes.
glistening in the morning sun.
Yeah.
You get a conceptual, you get, what's that?
There's a picture.
A kind of picture there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you can focus on that picture. So already that does count as a perception. But because one aspect of your mind, which is actually the reflexive aspect, is presenting
Yep.
just that content, right? So as a content, it's perception, but we think it's a strawberry.
Yeah, yeah.
So as a strawberry, it's a concept.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a
And it's vague, it's not that clear,
Yeah.
right? So that's one of its markers. But then you can focus on that again and again and again.
Yeah.
And you can then have a direct experience of that concept where it now is, it looks, in a sense, see it. It's no longer vague. It looks like you're seeing an actual strawberry. But what you're seeing is in your mind. So another example in that section that Dharmakirti is talking about this, he talks about the kasina practice.
Yeah, yeah, of the
Yeah.
Shavakyana.
Yeah, so which is also in Mahayana too, and where you take like a physical disc, you make a colored disc is one version of it, and you place it and you focus on it visually for a while, and then you don't need the disc after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And you just focus on the mental object, and eventually you get, a stable, highly concentrated state of attention on a mental object. So that's an example of mental perception. A good example of mental perception.
So the yogic yogic
So for
perception.
Dharmakirti, you can take, let's say, the idea of selflessness,
Yeah.
and you can focus, that has some kind of content.
And you can directly.
So you just focus on it again and again and again. And he says the examples he gives are like the hallucination of a lover. A very sad example is like the hallucination of a mother hearing her dead child crying,
Mm-hmm.
or waking up in night thinking there's a thief in your house.
Yeah.
Right? So those are kind of experiences where some mental content is experienced as direct.
Yeah.
It goes from being vague to being clear. So he says this, Tasmad bhutam abhutam va yajyadevati bhavyate bhavana parinishpattau spashta kalpati palam. Therefore, whatever you meditate on, whether it's true or false, eventually, when the meditation reaches its culmination, will result in a clear, non-conceptual awareness. Meaning, just the fact, which is, a little scary, because what it means is you can get off on the right track. I can believe there are gnomes in the table, and I can think that to the extent that eventually I see the gnomes in the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that tells you that just having an experience doesn't mean what you're experiencing is real.
That's right. So what makes a yogic pratyaksha? When do you know that it's pramana?
Yes, exactly. And basically, you know it's pramana because it changes you. It reduces your kleshas, and it moves you toward the goal.
Not about reality, it's about transformation in this case.
Pramana, remember for Dharmakirti,
Yeah.
pramana, which we should say, pramana is like a reliable awareness, a trustworthy awareness. This is a cup. Is it, can I wear? How do I know that's a cup? Well, I want to drink a cup of coffee. Yeah. It works, right?
Yeah.
Because it isn't really a cup.
Yeah.
I'm making that up.
Yeah.
Right. It's just this unique kind of space-time event.
Yeah.
But, my conceptual system that has developed is able to ignore all that, and I can make my way in the world, right? With my categories. Yeah. The problem is I think my categories are all real, but they're not. Yeah. But never mind. So
what works here is whether it reduces your afflictions or not.
Exactly. Yeah. Does it move you along the path? Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Especially, does it eliminate ignorance? Right. Yeah. So that's why. So then in that's Dharmakirti's explicit model, but he has, another model in which all of that is just conventional. And that's where he points toward, not very clearly, toward non-dual awareness. And that would not come from focusing on a concept and realizing it.
So at the end of
that would be induced by maybe a special set of concepts that kind of undo conceptuality. And
like
put you
in practice or something different?
No, well, basically, that's a very interesting question. But in the non-tantric context, it would basically be emptiness of one version or another, but especially like Yogacara Madhyamaka, later version of emptiness, that combines the phenomenological with the anti-realist critique.
Yeah.
Right? So then it induces, so it's like what it does is it induces a state you need to recognize.
Yeah.
So you can do that with philosophy.
Yeah.
You can also, if we talk about Tantra, obviously you can do that with Tantra. But it wouldn't so much be Kirim, right? It would be Zogrim. It would be Usel. It would be inducing. And it's even said you can do that with devotion.
Yeah.
So there's a target state. So in that tradition, then, philosophy has a role, but there are other ways to get there, actually.
Yeah.
Each of them has their potential drawbacks, but
I wanted to ask you.
So we started talking about Nalanda.
I wanted to ask you, if you were to go to Nalanda, which master would you go knock on the door of, and what would you ask him? But I'm a bit stuck on this yoga pratyaksha. I can't help but
we can go back to that.
I just wanted to flesh out that a little bit more because I'm a little slow. I need some help.
Okay.
So
let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Have you ever had eye floaters?
Yeah.
Are they clear? You see them directly? Yeah, right. Are they real?
What are you asking about? So there's Nangyul and Jukyul, right?
Yeah. You're way too sharp for me.
No. So
we should tell our audience Nangyul and Jukyul. So there's what appears and then what you're trying to actually work with to achieve your goal.
Yeah.
So go ahead. So
no, you finish.
You
finish.
No. So from the standpoint of an appearance, they're happening.
Yeah.
But from the standpoint of actually being able to do something with them as hairs, you can't do anything with them.
And this is what seems to be.
So that's what's called, you can say, like the Janus-faced aspect of all cognitions.
Yeah.
From the standpoint of being like the thought of a strawberry from the standpoint of being a mental event
Mm.
is actually is a particular.
Yeah.
It's a direct, you're having a direct perception of that.
Of the Nangyo or the Nangyo, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a mental
As a
event.
mental event. So the
But
mental,
as something that's so the thing about concepts
yeah,
is they say like when you look at this, you don't go, oh, that's about this.
yeah,
You're looking at this,
yeah,
right? You're just seeing the white color, right?
yeah, you,
It doesn't say, oh, this is about this over here.
yeah,
Whereas a concept is saying, I'm about this other thing.
yeah,
It's like transparent. You see right through it,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You don't realize it's mental even sometimes.
Yeah, yeah,
You're just
right.
like, oh, that's over there. There's
But not when it becomes yogic pratyaksha.
when it's for Dharmakirti's first version of Yogi Pratyaksha, you're taking a concept.
Yeah.
So this is that idea of, Chitsengi Tsuldu Tokpa Dang Ngunsundu Tokpa.
Yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
you can realize something in the form of a universal, which
Yeah.
means you're realizing it as a thought.
It's,
And so you're,
and then directly.
so chi tsuldu or chitsengi tsuldu
Yeah.
tokpa, right? So you're realizing it, you're knowing it, but you're not knowing it directly.
Because it's general.
Yeah. Well, because it's a concept.
Yeah, because it's a jutsu.
It's yeah. And so if it's conceptual, therefore it's de facto not a direct experience.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so then you can think about that again and again and again and again. You
Yeah.
can focus on it. You can use meditative concentration to focus on it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes direct.
Yeah.
Dharmakirti's thing is it becomes direct, like the guy or gal hallucinating their lover.
Yeah. So
So which
Yeah.
was not a popular. Let's just say
For the
that wasn't really picked. Maybe it was, but that wasn't really picked.
really good at that.
Yeah. That wasn't really picked up as an interpretation very much. And there are, I should say, some academic interpretations that don't like this way of talking about it, but I don't see any other plausible interpretation of
Let's
it.
just
So what that means is this.
yeah.
It's kind of great because it's sort of saying, all of your ideas are ideas, but
All of your ideas are ideas.
but they're powerful.
Yeah.
They can make you change, even if they're false. Like if I focus again and again and again, and then I have like an experience,
Yeah.
and I don't know, maybe I think, I don't know, reality has been produced by a large beast living in the core of Jupiter. I don't know, something, and I just
Yeah.
like and then I finally like, yes,
I see that.
I see it. He communicated with me or whatever, right? Like that can change my behavior. It could be, and the point is, I can thought, concepts, beliefs, right, which are not experience. A belief is not an experience. It's a belief. It's in my mind. That can have a huge impact, even though it's just a belief. So that's, I think, a really powerful thing. But then Dharmakirti's eventually, basically, he's going to say what you need is a very special kind of concept
Yeah.
to focus on that undoes itself and all concepts.
Yeah.
Right? So that's
So,
well, it starts with selflessness, but really this is where we get into the Yogacara version, the Madhyamaka Yogacara version, the Shantarakshita Kamalashila, who are the great descendants of, and also were at, I think Nalanda, definitely Vikramashila, but I think Nalanda as well. Right, they're in that tradition, and they are the two who went to Tibet, right? Shantarakshita Kamalashila. In what was that 8th century? Right? Have I got that right? 8th and 9th. Yeah. And I'm always a bad at the dating game, but their position is a combination of the Yogacara phenomenology and the Madhyamaka and a realist critique, right?
Yeah.
So, and in that you could say what the target state there is. It's a somewhat different. It's sort of like, where's the locus of emptiness? I could be saying the emptiness is, I'm focusing on objects, which are like the table's not really a table. A table's empty of really being a table. The cup is empty of really being a cup. A relation is empty of really being a relation. All of those things.
Yeah.
But then what if the locus is experience itself?
Yes.
So that's the shift, right?
Yes.
And then what you're trying to do is induce what's it like to experientially feel the cup is not really a cup.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I remember long ago when I was working with Bob Thurman, I think I had graduated already, and I had done some stuff in Europe and come back and spent some time with Bob. And uh, I remember Taro Rinpoche, I think Taro Toko Rinpoche
Mm.
was teaching us one of like the neither one nor many argument.
Yeah.
And I was at some point I was like driving a van to go pick up a bunch of monks, and I was thinking about this argument, going through it, and then the van like fell apart
Yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
I'm driving
Yeah, for
it.
sure.
And instead of freaking out though, I'm like laughing. It's not a good thing though. It's like people are beeping,
Yeah,
like get on the road.
yeah.
But so you can definitely
Have an experience
you
of
can
it.
have an experience, and those are really and that but that was like a kind of conceptual experience. Like I saw the objects falling away,
Yeah.
right? It was experiential as well, definitely. Like
Yeah.
I was feeling it, and it changed the way it definitely had an impact on me. But the special kind of, you could say, arguments, and sometimes not arguments, like yoga exercises that are in that other layer of yogi pratyeka for dharmakirti, are arguments that are about the experience itself, and the idea is that the emptiness here is the emptiness of even the structure of experience,
Yeah.
of a sense of a self in here, in a world out there.
This dualism.
Whoops, I'm hitting my mic. Like that whole sense, like that dualism, right? So to collapse that, if anytime I have a thought, I'm dualistic.
Yeah.
Thoughts are, I mean, there are many reasons for that, for Dharmakirti and pretty much all Buddhist theorists after Dharmakirti.
Mm.
Thoughts are always about trying to get stuff in the world. It's like the inactive perspective of Francisco Varela and Evan Thompson and so on. Like, we think, as Dharmakirti says, we don't do it just for a bad habit. We do it because we want the good stuff and we don't want the bad stuff. So that's why we're conceptualizing all the time, right? So thoughts are always about the world. What am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
Right? I'm an agent doing stuff with that. So that's what thoughts are always about. So if I'm thinking about something, if I'm trying to realize something as an object, I'm always going to be dualistic.
Yeah.
So I need some kind of special kind of thinking, if you're going to do this philosophically, some kind of special method that actually undoes the thinking, right?
Yeah.
And along with
the structure itself.
it undoes it undoes what it's teaching you, and along with it the structure.
Yeah.
Right. So that's not easy to do. And there are other methods. So like in Chan, Zen, Sion, and like a koan is an example also of that.
So this is maybe like unfamiliar territory for like Western philosophers of mind who might think that, you said thoughts are always about something. They might even go further and say consciousness is always intentionality of consciousness. So it seems like that Dharmakirti has a place where there is consciousness that doesn't have intentionality, for example.
Correct.
Yeah.
Also, he would say that there's an aspect of consciousness in every moment that is actually non-intentional.
Okay.
That it's an aspect of consciousness that is constantly being presented, but it's presented without being made into an object. And actually, this also overlaps with the Western phenomenological tradition, where it's called pre-reflective self-consciousness.
Yeah.
So it basically means like, you see me and you have a sense of like, I'm over here, and there's even with vision, there's like a spatial kind of orientation, right? But there's a sense in which, so if I say, I don't know, let's say, I'll make a sound. This is one way I do this. Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, beep,
Yeah.
or classic,
Yeah. Finding out.
which I'm not doing. But if we do that, so we made that sound, and I say, okay, when you heard that sound, you heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you sitting down when you heard it?
Yes.
How do you know?
How do I know I was sitting down?
Yeah. Do you have
Memory?
to like or is it memory? Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I don't.
When you asked the question and you said, "Are you sitting down?" Then I
Yeah, but do you do it this way? Like, well, I don't remember getting up, and I'm sitting down now when you ask me. So I must have been sitting down.
No, there seems to be some ongoing reference point for me.
Yes.
That travels along with me that I reflect on and say I was sitting down.
Yes, and the point is, you don't need to be paying attention to that reference point.
No, that's the point. So where was that information at the time?
So that information was being presented to you,
Yeah.
and it's like indubitable. Like another sense of it is, do you have a sense it was you hearing that sound or somebody else?
Someone might say I constructed that.
We can definitely say, and there are people who do say that.
Yeah.
But the claim here, and also in the phenomenological tradition, is that that's a structure of experience.
Yeah.
And so that sense of our temporal spatial location,
Yeah.
the sense of a subjectivity and so on, that's being presented without it being an object. I'm looking at an object.
Yeah. It's
But
almost like
that means it's presented non-dually.
yeah, it almost is like part of the subjective experience. So like when you snap, right? That's comes through hearing, right? So if I ask you a question, were you hearing when that sound occurred? What does that even mean?
Yeah, that seems. Where was I hearing when the
Like if
sound
you just
occurred?
take a phenomenological approach, right?
Yeah.
And you try and
You mean say what is hearing?
what is the distinction between hearing and sound phenomenologically at that point?
That's another interesting question that I think goes in a different direction.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yes,
okay. Yeah.
that's a very like how is the
Like
that's
what?
one way of starting to point toward a kind of non-duality, right?
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
what are you actually hearing
You cannot
is something presented in your consciousness already.
the hearing and sound collapse.
Yeah, because
And then you realize that non-duality was the way it was. And dualism is like a structure sort of imposed. It seems to me like that. I don't know.
except that and sound is not so good for this because sound or it does have a kind of like inside, outside, where is it
Why?
feeling to it.
It does?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it can be kind of imprecise
seems
in its
conceptual.
location. But this is why vision, and very often vision is used in these contexts, is good because it has a stronger, like, that's over there. There's a locatedness
Well,
to the experience.
yeah, that's
But the
true.
claim would be that you have that with sound too.
Well,
So there's like a kind
yeah,
of, like you said, like an orientation point.
yeah,
That's just carrying. So you can have, so the idea, a dualistic experience is
Yeah.
one in which we think that orientation is real.
totally.
It's totally real. But within it, we're already having a kind of non-dual experience, which is that sense of like, the 0 point or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, that's being presented without us looking at it.
Yeah,
But we know it's there. We feel it for
Yeah.
sure. And the difference between the Western phenomenological tradition and, these style of non-Buddhist traditions is that for the non-Buddhist traditions, that structure is actually a distortion.
yeah.
Ultimately, that's not how things are.
Because knowing is normally,
So teaching people that,
yeah,
right? Because that's an incredibly profound,
yeah,
even philosophical point, but also experientially, it really changes people radically. Like
Yeah.
when we just had a paper come out, or it hasn't come out yet, but it was submitted to a prize in the minimal phenomenal experience group, started by this philosopher Thomas Metzinger in Germany. Very interesting group, that work they've been doing, and we had a paper that's won a prize in which we took a very advanced practitioner in this non-dual style and dosed them up with 5-MeO DMT.
Yep.
Which is, toad, otherwise known as.
toad.
Yes. And basically, to make the long story short, we looked at EEG between the meditation state and so on, and there were definitely overlaps. But, he basically said, if you didn't know what non-dual experience was, you would think this was a non-dual experience. But it isn't. But that does tell you it's close, right? You are getting kind of close to something.
How does he know
But-
if his non-dual experience is non-dual if he can say something like that, right?
I don't know. You'll have to ask him.
It's interesting,
I
but
mean, there is that thing, right? There's of ding, like when you get a confidence.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And how do
So,
you know?
so basically, the point here is super interesting, right? This person's on this hallucinogenic,
Yeah.
has a experience of like a lot of people say, oh, I had this experience of the total
Non-dual,
dissolution of
yeah.
myself.
Yes, yeah.
Like selflessness, non-dual.
Yeah.
And then this person who hasn't had that experience chemically before,
Right.
has very well trained in the non-dual, is a
Very long.
Mahamudra. Or
Very-
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Mahamudra master. And he then takes
Mahamudra
this,
Dzogchen, yeah.
Dzogchen. Then he takes this experience that we hear about all
Yes.
these people who take it, and he says, good, but not it.
Yeah.
Is that what's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what did he say was the distinction between it,
So
like the hallucinogenic? genic experience and the non-dual
And,
Marmor
and
drug
this is what
experience.
I think helps us to kind of talk about this idea that there's this just a subtle sense, almost like of, the phenomenologist Dan Zahavi uses this term for me-ness.
Yes.
Like there's something happening, there's still some subtle structure where things are presented, for me.
Yeah.
Now, I've never had 5-MeO DMT because it's yet,
Yeah.
but it is said that people like can have a total whiteout kind of experience. It can be very profound. It can also really be very frightening for some people. It can be really revelatory. The famous neuroscientist Christoph Koch had that experience, and it totally changed many aspects of
Yeah.
both personally, but also his views. Uh, so, I don't mean to disparage it, really. I think it's something you need to be careful about, of course. But I do think it's important to recognize the idea that there's, even in what seem to be, our most profound epiphanic experiences, I'm having a great
Yeah.
epiphany, I'm one with the world, that very subtle structure can persist.
Yeah.
So how do you teach people? Like, what is that kind of education that leads them to get to that point?
Beyond that.
And also, like, why would we even bother? And that's another thing. So one of the things I think, like in contemporary world, part of what we have, in some ways, we have an incredible abundance of is intelligence. Right? We have just an unbelievable amount of intelligence, and now we have artificial intelligence. I can tell you about some interesting conversations I've been having with ChatGPT lately, if
Yep.
you'd like. But uh, so we have like this information processing. We have
Yeah.
a tremendous amount of it. But what we're talking about here is like one way to think about intelligence, and actually the group Thomas Doctor,
Yeah.
him, is
Yeah.
running this group, the Center for the Study of Apparent Selves, and there are a number of really great people associated with that. Mike Levin, Olaf Witkowski, a few other people. They've
Yeah.
written some really interesting articles on kind of the Bodhisattva AI.
Yeah.
Uh, and part of this is like, how do you train? So it's also about education, actually. Like, how do you
Yeah.
train an AI like that? What are the parameters, and what kind of training would it have? But there they have a concept of intelligence which has to do with, in a sense, problem solving, right? And then the kind of bodhisattva part of it is, well, you only solve the problems you care about.
Yeah.
So if your sphere of care is basically infinite, you need infinite intelligence for that. And that's, and so if an AI really cares for everybody, first of all, maybe that's one way to get to artificial general intelligence, like super intelligence. But also maybe that's a way of making sure that the AI is going to align with our values and our goals and everything, right? So I really like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think intelligence is problem solving. And maybe I'm doing a disjustice to their work too, but
And it doesn't necessarily follow that for infinite problems you need infinite intelligence. I don't.
yeah,
That's
maybe
not the
not.
claim
Maybe not.
that's sound.
But
But anyway, yeah.
let's just this what we need, and this is the kind of education we need, which is not just an education of books, is
Yeah.
one that is where it's not just intelligence, it's wisdom.
What's the
And
what's
yeah,
the
then
difference?
what
Intelligence
is
and wisdom.
yeah, so one way to think about it is, okay, let's say my fundamental problem
Yeah.
is I'm unhappy.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out why. First, maybe I think it's your fault. Because you maybe drive here 90 miles an hour on the West Side Highway, but maybe it's your fault or
Yeah.
somebody else's fault or whatever, and then I think, no, maybe I'm just not eating the right things,
Yeah.
right? Or I'm having too much of this, or I'm having too much of that, or I just don't live in the right place, and I keep trying to make myself happy, 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 and that's a problem. So, but the framework of that problem is I am a self that is not happy, and I need to fix that.
Yeah.
And the Buddhist response, and like the non-Buddhist, that was a problem that the Buddha and many other people in roughly 500 BC shared, right? They all thought that was a problem.
Yeah.
Not all, but many, many traditions, many wanderers, as they were called, thought that was a problem. And most of the other solutions were basically, well, you just have to figure out that yourself, your true self, is, for example, just stuck inside you. It's like trapped inside your body, and you have to liberate it, or whatever. The problem is you don't know what your true self is, and the Buddha agreed with that. Except his way of saying it was, yes, you don't know what it really is because it doesn't exist at all. So that's why you can't make yourself happy. Like, can you make a non-existent entity happy?
So wisdom isn't stuck in the problem to solve it.
So wisdom here is like the problem. If we take that problem, we have a framework which constitutes the problem. Yeah. There's a self that's not happy. Yeah. And now I'm trying to problem solve around that. And wisdom is going, whoop, this framework is the problem.
Yeah. An intelligent person can solve the problem that a wise person knows they need to step out of.
Yeah, and well, the idea here in this case is that the intelligence person could never
solve that problem.
No amount of intelligence could solve that problem.
Yeah. So
right,
and that even infinite intelligence.
Yes,
because the problem.
Exactly.
The problem is the structure.
Exactly, it's the structure. It's the parameters that lay the problem out initially.
Yeah.
And so, being able to do that, which humans can do, right, is part of that's relevant to what we call what's relevance realization in the AI context. Something I just published an article on with my colleague Nadav Amir, who's now at the University of Toronto. Is like, and AIs can't figure out like what they need to pay attention to essentially without the right kind of parameters and training. You can put digital stakes in the road or whatever, and then it makes it easier. But the reason we don't just have anonymous cars driving everywhere is partially that we, how do you decide what information is relevant to a decision?
Yeah.
And humans just do that, they learn to do that so quickly and are incredibly good at it, just shifting frameworks. Like, I'm playing this game now.
Yes.
Right? When they first created like AlphaGo, you couldn't just take AlphaGo and put it in front of Monopoly and have it play Monopoly. They just didn't. You could take any Go master and they could watch people play Monopoly and figure it out, right? But that wasn't the way AlphaGo was designed. Even though it was a neural net type of arrangement, it wasn't. It didn't work that way.
Yeah.
And that's why it's not artificial general intelligence. We have that.
Yeah.
And part of that is wisdom. But teaching people that kind of wisdom is not just about books and even just about ideas. Because that's where practices become so important.
Practice, yeah, because it's got to be embedded in experience in some way. The AI Buddhist consciousness conversation is a whole nother podcast, right? Like that would be an incredible one to have you back for. We're going to have a break now. Everyone, please add your questions in, and we're going to come back in 5 minutes. And I'll ask John your question. So we'll shift into that gear.
Sounds good.
I need 2 hours here with you.
Yeah, sorry.
That was insanely
fast.
Now, generally, people consider religion, consider something based on faith. But Indian tradition, including non-Buddhist theory, all very much emphasis on reasoning.
But the vision behind special anthology was considered by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And the aim of His Holiness for this series is to create a platform and a medium through which the great insights and knowledge of the Indian Buddha masters, particularly of the Nalanda tradition, be shared more broadly. Of conclusion, just as His Holiness writes at the end of his introduction to Volume 1, I quote, "I pray these volumes become a source of great benefit to many people," end of quote. We hope that this course will be a source of benefit and joy to many people.
We got lots of questions, but okay. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for all your questions. I wanted to, and I hope you were able to hear about the course. That's sort of why we're doing this, and John is recording tomorrow, and we have it's a free course, donation only, and it's something His Holiness Office really wanted us to do, and it's this amazing 10-week course based on these books with great translators and great scientists and great philosophers. Incredible. The other thing I wanted to mention just before we jump into it is there's a Chukyinma Rinpoche is starting a new program that John's very much involved in. Maybe I'll let you talk to it a little bit. Could you just introduce
Sure.
this?
Yes. Yeah. So sort of
Yep. Our internet? Okay. Did we start it all or we just start again? That's okay. Yeah, we have some apologies. Now I can read these questions.
How are we doing? Good way.
Yeah. Is everything okay on Sammy's end? It's just us. Our internet up here because of the rain. You gotta get a landline.
Yeah. Ethernet.
Yeah, Ethernet straight in.
Where's your modem?
Modems.
But actually, if it's repeater,
Yeah. Okay, we're good. Are we on? Thank you. Welcome back, everyone.
sorry.
Sorry for some technical delays there. I just wanted to, I hope you got to see the trailer for the course based on these books. A fantastic course, donation only, starts, I think, December 19th, something around there. We'll send out more information soon, but I think you can sign up now. There should be a link in the chat. The other thing I just wanted to mention before we get into your Q&As, which I have here, thank you so much, is there's a very, very special and important project that Chukyinma Rinpoche is undertaking, and the main man under Rinpoche here is Professor John Dunne. So can you tell us a little bit about this project that's going on in Austria?
Sure. So inspired, so it's obviously not just me, we have a whole team, but inspired by actually the London tradition and that tradition of Buddhist education, and also by our sister institution in Kathmandu, the Ranjang Yishi Institute. We're seeking to create a new university in Austria, actually. That we're actually still kind of tinkering with the name. We're thinking maybe Bodhigyan is one possibility, Dharma Surya, so awakening wisdom, or the son of the Dharma. These are translations of those Sanskrit words. But what part of what we have actually is found an amazing property, in fact, a castle that would be perfect for our university. But we've also got a bunch of people who are really not, obviously a property is great and very important, but what we want to do is something really different, like around that idea of not just intelligence, but wisdom. We have plenty of intelligence right now. What we need is wisdom and connection. And so we're going to have a program that's really going to be on the Buddhist side, that's going to emphasize kind of the scholar practitioner model, but also part of what we're doing, I'm working with some really wonderful people who see that we need a different paradigm of leadership, both in the business world and in politics, in other contexts as well, like NGOs. And so we're trying to develop a new kind of leadership program as well that'll be a core aspect of the university. So we've been working on this for a while. Things are starting to pick up. Yeah. And if people are interested, they can certainly be in touch with me, and we can also maybe share.
Yeah, is there a website link?
There is on the Dharma Surya University. I think if they Google that, they should find it, but we'll also make sure to get you a link.
And so, and then a modern day Nalanda.
It's what we hope. Yes.
Yeah. Changing the world.
Yes,
educating the
and also changing the paradigm,
Yeah.
changing the paradigm of education. I mean, one way of thinking about what's happening right now is that in terms of cultural evolution, like in genetic evolution, there are things that are maladaptive, like they were adaptive for a while and then they stop working.
Yeah.
And they actually start harming maybe. So like the appendix is the classic example in humans.
Yeah.
Like we needed it when we ate a lot of roughage, but now it can just, make us sick or even kill us, right? Likewise, there are things in cultural evolution that were adaptive and then they become maladaptive. So like absolute monarchies in Europe were kind of adaptive for a while. They helped in certain ways and then they became maladaptive. We went through all these revolutions, some of which are not even quite over yet. Likewise, there's many aspects of our current culture that are maladaptive, which have to do a lot with, for example, with the way we think about value and the purpose of the purpose of our lives, but also in business context. Like, what is it? What is a business about? What's it for? In the context of leadership, what is power? What is it for? Is that our goal, simply to obtain, for example, more profit and more power? So those are the kinds of questions that we really want to address. We feel like those are areas in which we need new adaptations, that our cultural evolution really needs a little something that will enable it to accelerate. So we're trying to accelerate cultural evolution with this project.
Yeah, this sounds incredible and also like quite a huge reach, right? So you get a lot of help and a lot of support.
Exactly.
And you're in the financial sort of fundraising phase.
We're very much in that fundraising phase, and we have pretty big requirements, but also we have lots of hope and also some really concrete support already. But we definitely need more.
We'll put the links in the show notes.
All right, thank you.
All right, everyone, thank you for your questions. Okay. So this is from Kate Thomas. She says, my root teacher saw his cup of tea as Vajrasattva and referred to it as that way at the end of his life. He would point to his cup and say, give me Vajrasattva, give me Vajrasattva. That was his realization being expressed to him. His students would hand him his cup of tea. So I guess the question is around this direct yogic pratyaksha.
Yes.
Is that like an example of that, or is that just like pure vision, something different? How do you, when you hear
that's a toughie actually, because pure vision is not. I think there's a sort of I've never thought about it this way. There's a version of pure vision, which I think is kind of conceptual. Probably my version is mostly conceptual. It's like, oh, Daniel's, he's a bodhisattva. I see him with I don't actually see the crown. I'm sorry, and the three kinds of necklaces. I don't really see that. Sorry. Om Ahom.
No, I don't either.
Right. But, so there's a kind of conceptual version of pure vision.
Imagination,
Yeah, but here, like imagination where it's like, it's not experiential. But then there is, I think, for sure, and maybe I've even had this occasionally, but definitely I think some practitioners get to the point where that's really like experiential, like they see that's Vajrasattva, Every sound is mantra, right? Every gesture is mudra, right? So is that like just a matter of concepts? I don't think so. But this is where, Tantra always gets a little more complicated. But in a way, one way to think about that is that the Tantric reality is a sort of parallel universe in a way.
Okay. That's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. It's like it's a little bit like, we and the Pretas overlap.
Yes.
But when we look at the river, we see water and they see pus.
Yeah.
I think that's the way I think of it.
Yeah.
And there is some. Heidi Koppel wrote this book a long time ago. What's the name of that book? The Deities Appearing something.
Yeah.
Again?
It's
from Longzumba. Yeah, it's from Longzumba.
Actually, she came on the podcast.
Really wonderful
episode on that, on pure vision, actually.
Yes. So there you go.
Yeah.
So I think she's probably the better person to ask.
And I think that was like there's a reality out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
It's not just imagination.
It's not just imagination. Another term you sometimes hear is when we talk about the three natures, there's the constructive nature, the relative nature, and the absolute nature.
Yep.
But you can have, sometimes you'll also hear the idea of the Dakwe Shenwang, the pure relative nature. So the relative nature is basically the flow of experience, which is mistaken in dualistic context for like subject-object. But the pure version would be like, the mandala.
Yeah, yeah. So not a kuntak, not a conceptual
No.
over the mistaken on the Shenwang. Actually, the Shenwang itself can be pure.
Yes.
The Shenwang itself can be pure.
Right, as Rupa, as Lila,
as Ropa,
as playful expression.
Yeah.
Or in Dzogchen as cell.
Yeah, cell.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the difference between Ropa and cell in Dzogchen?
Rupa starts with the Ra and cell.
Here we go. Cell starts with an R, yeah? Okay.
It does actually. Yeah.
Yes.
In transliteration, it does.
All right. Gotcha.
Yeah,
No.
you did. Yeah.
So next
the short answer is I really don't know. But
yeah. It's an interesting.
It's a very interesting question. Yeah. I mean, part of it, yeah, I don't want to go.
We won't go down that.
Yeah.
I was joking, actually. Yeah. But maybe one day we can have that conversation.
I mean, that question, Sele has interesting stuff about the difference between Mahmudra and Dzogchen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Because they also overlap so much, right?
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, like Chak Dzog, there's a reason we have that compound.
Yeah.
Chakchen and Dzogchen. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, next question. I'm especially interested in the Buddhist Kashmir connections that led to the debates that helped create Trika Shiva region in Kashmir of, sorry, I'm butchering this, Vasugupta Shiva Sutras, and culminating around with Abhinava Gupta in 950 CE and 1016 CE, which seems to be around Dharmakirti's time, who among contemporary scholars have followed up on this cultural flowering of Buddhist debates with the Shaivites?
So that's a great question, and I know a little bit about that. One of the things that's really interesting about the relationship between Dharmakirti and the Pratyabhijna system or Trika system is that they cite Dharmakirti by name.
Really?
Yeah. And they say, like, as the great Dharma, like they admire him. Oh, yeah. But they say he made certain mistakes, basically. But they adopt, like, for example, the Apoha system, this theory of how concepts are formed, the exclusion theory of concept formation. They adopt it, they modify it, but they say, and they don't pretend they made it up. They say, yeah, Dharmakirti is the guy who talked about this. And so I've seen that in text a few different times, but the person to really ask this question to is Kat Pruitt at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, who did her dissertation with me. Hopefully she's not too scarred from that experience, but I was a little bit. It was tough on Abhinava and Dharmakirti, actually. So that dissertation's available, and Kat's definitely produced some other articles since then. They definitely touch on this topic. So it's a great question. There is a book many years ago by Alam Nadu, I think is his name, which I think was also translated into French, called something like the Kashmiri Buddhists or something. It was done quite a long time ago, but a good historical treatment. Yeah, pretty good historical treatment that talks about some of this as well.
What was that book titled again?
I think it's the Buddhists of Kashmir.
Yeah, and has Kat got a book out?
I think it's called like Les Bouddhistes Kashmiriens. It was originally in French, but I think it's come out in English years ago.
And has Kat got a book out, or is it more her?
I don't think Kat has. I think I'm not sure where she stands on publishing her dissertation. Philosophy departments don't always care about books. Actually, they want you to do articles. Yeah. So. I'm not sure what her plans are, but the dissertation is available, of course.
Yeah.
But she also has several articles that are about this directly or indirectly.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
that's good for.
And she's great. She does great work.
Yeah, yeah, she does.
So she's probably the best person right now for that. I'd say is Kat.
Perfect. Good. Thank you. So next question: is the mental state of bliss regarded as direct perceptual or derived from habituated focusing on the object of non-duality? So bliss.
So the what you can call the sort of tone. So I think one thing that's helpful here, and this is actually in the context of the mind, this volume that we did, is it's helpful to think about how a state of consciousness, a moment of consciousness, has many different features. And as you know, in the Abhidharma system, and a big part of what we did in that book is about these different, what we call this chitta, like consciousness, a moment of consciousness or mind. And then there's chaitasika or chaita, which are these different facets occurring with that moment of mind. And one division that can be helpful, and the Buddhist account is actually in some ways more complex than this, but in kind of cognitive scientific accounts, psychological accounts will talk about the difference between cognition and affect. Actually, they're deeply overlapping, which is part of the reason the Buddhists don't really use those distinctions. But it's kind of helpful in this way. To talk about cognition is about what you're knowing. Talk about affect is how you're knowing it. So I can be looking at, our favorite mug here, and I can be looking at it, sort of wishing it were filled with coffee. Or I could be looking at it, worried that we bought too many for wisdom. Or I can have different affective frames. Some of those would be emotional. Some of those we wouldn't quite describe as emotion. So when we say bliss is an affective frame. It's a feeling. It's like not what you are experiencing. It's not the object. It's not what you're thinking about. Of course, you can turn it into an object, right? But it is, in the moment, it is the frame of whatever you're experiencing. So in some versions of, Tantra, we talk about bliss, emptiness. It's like emptiness is what you're knowing, and the bliss is how you're knowing it.
Yeah.
Right? That's one version, like a kind of more or less Galupa style would talk about it in those terms, right? So bliss is not a thing that we know. So, and here's, I mean, we can turn our attention to the bliss and turn it into an object that we observe. But when we're experiencing it initially, it's not a what, it's a how.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, everything that is a how, so while I'm looking at the glass, maybe I'm feeling bliss, right? But what I'm looking at is the cup. I'm not paying attention to the bliss, but I'm feeling the bliss. Then I might go, oh, I'm feeling bliss. And now I'm trying to turn my bliss into an object and look at it. But when I'm just doing that and it's happening, I'm knowing that in exactly the same way you said you knew that you were sitting down.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we call, this is really Rangrig in Tibetan, right? This reflexive awareness, which is essential to every moment of consciousness. So all of my feelings are also presented that way.
Yeah.
Especially if they're strong enough. That doesn't mean I notice them, or especially that I pay attention to them, right? But they're being presented.
When the structure of dualism collapses, do you still have a how?
Yeah, that's all you have.
You only have a how.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It seemed, anyway, in different conversation, the hallucinogenic, non-hallucinogenic, non-duality, I think that how might be an interesting conversation in that space.
Yes, definitely. And that's part of the challenge of hallucinogenics, and this also our practitioner reported. Like, part of the issue also is that in general, they kind of make things fuzzy. There can be very intense experiences, but there's a kind of disordered, like as you the mind becomes kind of disordered, like a little bit like
fall asleep, you get this fuzziness.
Like the hypnagogic, that's called the hypnagogic state. Yes, exactly. Yeah,
if
it's
you
that.
fall asleep, there's this sort of
what's happening?
I can draw you into an absorption dream or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
I love conversations with you, John. They're fantastic. All right, but I better get back to the questions. What are those special concepts that lead us to the direct experience of non-duality? You were talking about normal, and then special concepts that get you to non-duality.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, there are different. So there are kind of things that are almost like tricks, like a koan.
Yes.
Right? Certain kinds of mengak are like that.
Yeah.
Right? That and some mengak are kind of just,
pith instructions.
They're pith instructions that are not pointing to that necessarily, but maybe are coming up to it. Like one of my favorites is by Saraha. Churbo chingwei senjiti, luna drorwa tetso me. This mind tied up in knots, if you just let go, it will be free. There is no doubt.
Very nice.
Right? So it's not exactly, so there's some mengak that I don't feel qualified to share that are much more direct, but you can sort of see how, okay, something's being gestured toward. But in the philosophical context, the concepts are actually usually a sequence of concepts that's an argument that leads you to an overwhelming conclusion, which is that the whole thing falls apart. Like it just pops you into that state. And these are basically arguments. If you look at, for example, the one, neither one nor many argument, if you follow that, you start with matter and you just keep going.
Well,
and then this is what Shantarakshita does in the Madhyamaka Alankara, the ornament of Madhyamaka, which is available in translation from which group is the Padmakara group, right? The Thomas Doctor, I think. And so anyway,
and before that, Sri Gupta, I have to say that.
Okay, yes, of course, Sri Gupta, neither one nor many. Do you know someone who's worked out?
Yes, my wife.
Yes, yeah.
I'll be in trouble if I go home and do it.
Yeah, right.
So,
And that's that's the key. It's like taking that argument and it goes all the way down. Like it goes from matter all the way into the mind.
Yeah.
And then even into the nature of mind itself.
Yeah.
And the conclusion isn't, oh, this is the nature. This is like I've got it. I can point my finger on it. It's like, boom.
Yeah.
It all falls apart.
Yeah.
Like the last vestige of falling, and yet you're not unconscious.
Yeah.
And that's of course the parallel to like psychedelic type experiences, and why they may be helpful for depression, for example. Like, I'm a depressed person. I have this terrible story I tell about myself and the world. I take a psychedelic. I literally am incapable of keeping that story together, but I'm still conscious.
Yes.
Which means, maybe that story was just a story.
Yes.
Right? And so that's a profound experience for people.
That's transformative.
Yeah, we think that's, group I've been working with, that's a hypothesis about, why that works. And likewise, when you have that kind of a moment of realization, right, of, all of our stories are like that. Yeah. That changes you.
Yeah. We're gonna do another one if you wouldn't be so kind to come back. Anyway, we've got more questions. Thank you so much for offering us this opportunity to listen to this pithy and rich conversation with Professor Dunne. Would dream images qualify as mental concepts similar to the example of the strawberry you gave? Do dream experiences have a special conceptual or mental status? Thank you.
They would be mental experiences. They would be manasa prachaksha. Yes, you're having mental perceptions. Of course, you can have thoughts in a dream too, and then they're not perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And this is again a little confusing. That every thought is a perception as a mental event, but we don't pay attention to it as a mental event, so it's not sharp and clear to us.
Yeah.
Right. So in the dream as well, we can have events that are clear and sharp, and that's kind of like not even necessarily a lucid dream, right? But when those are definitely perceptions. But then we can have things that are maybe more like a hypnagogic state, where they're really kind of thoughts floating through and by, and
ideas.
They're not really rising to the level of perception.
Mm.
It's one way to think about it is there's always a kind of background level of perception that's ongoing, but then in our ordinary phenomenal experience, a lot of the time we're just caught up in the conceptual level of things. We're not even really living, so to speak, at the perceptual level, at the direct level.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting point, actually.
Yeah.
That's an insight in itself.
Yeah.
To bring into daily life.
And part of the reason we're doing that is we're always trying to do something.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do something, what do you need? Concepts.
Yeah. What was the AI relevant study that you mentioned?
So that's it's coming out. Is it out yet? It might be out. It's coming out in Contemporary Buddhism, and it's a series of papers that was done for a conference in Kathmandu last year.
So if people wanted to find that, how would they go
they
about
could look it up. I'm trying to remember.
We can put a link in the show notes.
Okay, yeah.
If you send
But
a link, put it in.
the author, my co-author is Nadav Amir, Nadavamir.
Okay. Is that the one you won an award for recently?
No, that's the one. Well, the Radnavli, we won an
Yes, we
award.
won an award. We should have
said something about that. Where's the Radnavli?
So,
But,
John
yeah.
and Sarah McClintock just won an award for their translation of Nagarjuna's Ratnavali, published by Wisdom Publications, which we're
Thanks to you guys, we won that. Yeah.
We will put a link to that one as well in
Yes.
the chat.
But no, the one that won an award hasn't appeared in any journals yet, but it was submitted, but it was completed and submitted for an award. It'll appear. It's in preprint status now.
Okay.
Chris Timmerman is I think the lead author. He's at University College London. Antoine Lutz is on it.
Oh, wow.
I can't. I don't want to try to name all the authors because I'll forget some. But maybe we can put a link to the preprint.
Yes, you send me that. We'll put it in. We'll put it in
Okay.
the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do a couple more. We've got so many questions here. Sorry, we can't get to all the questions. Okay, let's go with basically there's a whole heap of AI questions,
Okay.
right? So maybe we should just do another podcast
We
on
could
AI.
do an AI. Maybe bring like my buddy Adam Frank in or something. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll
Or Nadav, actually, for that matter.
that would be awesome. So we could do a whole series, John. AI, hallucinogenics, all this sort of that would be
They're all, I mean, the connection, one of the connections there that I'm also really working on these days is consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Which is, of course, an incredibly important question for us these days.
Yeah.
It's always been, but it's got a certain
It's coming up.
intensity now.
Yeah. So what is your view of eliminative materialism?
It depends on what you're eliminating. If it were eliminating poverty and suffering, then I'd be for
You're
it.
up for it.
Usually it means eliminativism usually means that there's no consciousness and that consciousness is an illusion. I mean, it's really strong versions of eliminativism get a little silly. In fact, I think Galen Strawson, the philosopher whom I love, calls it the silliest idea in the world. I think it's the way he refers to it, I believe. And because it's so patently, obviously false, like an extreme version of it. But you can have a kind of eliminativist version, which basically says experience is happening, but it's actually epiphenomenal to everything else. It's irrelevant. It's sort of like when you heat the tea kettle by accident. I don't know, you happen to steam off the wallpaper by the stove, but that who cares? It's just a thing that's happening. What we care about is so like all of the important functions are happening like at a subphenomenal level in the brain.
Yeah.
And when I make decisions, I just make it up, like why I'm doing it, because my brain has already made the decision, and nothing, like everything I feel and think I'm just a flesh robot that happens to have an interior life. I don't know, as an accident.
Why?
Yeah, just an accident.
It's just an accident.
Yeah, there's one version. It's just like it evolved as an accident.
And then,
so the main problem with this position, and this is an opportunity to, I just mentioned my buddy Adam Frank.
Yeah.
He and Evan Thompson and Marcelo Glazer wrote a book called The Blind Spot.
A brilliant book.
So my answer is pretty much their answer to that, which is, how do you know there's matter?
Yeah.
In other words, all of our scientific work, all of the analysis of matter and so on, is from the standpoint of consciousness. That doesn't mean that matter is consciousness.
No.
Right? That doesn't mean that idealism or some version of that is the solution here. What it means is that the very idea of the very idea of eliminativism assumes that somehow we can step outside of consciousness and see matter and even see consciousness.
Yeah.
And that stepping outside is the fundamental problem with that position.
We know everything because of consciousness, right?
Everything we know is through consciousness. And one way to say that is that when we forget that, then what tends to happen is we think the map is the territory.
Yeah.
We think our map of matter is the territory, is the actual matter.
And actually, we don't have a good answer to what matter is.
No, and it keeps changing.
It keeps changing, and usually
everyone thought string theory was going to be so great, and I was just listening to a podcast, actually with Marcelo and Adam, in which they were saying, string theory, I'm so tired of it. Like, get rid of it. It's over.
Yeah, it seems like that's a trend.
Oh yeah, it's
And here's the thing:
I think people have given up on string theory.
And then a lot of work is done on this assumption that there will be a final particle. So, but that sort of begs the whole question anyway, right?
Oh yeah, but a unified field theory of some kind is But one way to think about that is, instead of looking for a unified field theory, think about how we can get more sophisticated in recognizing when we're shifting frames with our maps. Yeah. Like we look at something in a different way, it looks different.
Yeah. How do you square Rangrick with the blind spot sort of? is it, we don't need to go down that, but that seems to work just fine for you. You can,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Well,
I mean, it's necessary actually.
Yeah.
Because Rangrig or reflexive awareness really is just saying how do we understand what it means to be conscious?
yeah,
And what requirements need to be in place. So just setting aside all experiential stuff, which there is lots about,
Yeah.
you know, Rangrig, just like, what do we need? Even just thinking, in kind of almost like a transcendental Kantian mode.
yeah.
Like, what do we need to be conscious? And something like Rangrig is, unless you go for second order theories and so on, which really seem to fall apart in my view.
Yeah.
And also empirically, like, yeah, this is consciousness is about the light, so to speak, presenting what's going on, whether it's got dualistic structures or some other affect or whatever, all of that has to be presented.
Lights on. Yeah.
The light's on.
So let's, last question. Do dream yoga practices help transcend thoughts, emotion, and body feeling and are a way to develop more awareness that would help us progress on our spiritual path? Thank you so much, Professor Dunne.
I would think I have limited, experience, and with all practices, I would think, I mean, yeah, of course. But what was the question again? What were they asking?
Basically, is dream yoga helpful for understanding thoughts, concepts, perceptions?
It could be.
Help us transcend those things. Can dream yoga help?
I don't know. Yeah, I might want to not think of it as transcend is the right word. And that's, I think, a little bit the danger sometimes with dream yoga is people are kind of using it to escape, actually. And so I don't know so the bit of a feeling in that direction, maybe.
Yeah.
I would say that actually a more, a kind of mindfulness style practice, like in Mahamudra context, where you're developing shamatha with an object and then without an object. A lot of that is also cultivating the capacity to sort of be able to notice experience without getting caught in experience. Like Mingyur Rinpoche has this, like, sometimes kind of teaches people the end at the beginning.
Yes.
Right? And so he'll say, now gonna teach you the practice. This is it. Ready? And then it's just basically like just let the mind settle in its natural state. And he'll say something or even almost not say something. And people are going, okay. And then that's it.
That's it.
It's like, just don't be lost.
Yeah.
Right? Just don't be lost. And I think for that, probably actually dream yoga might not be a good starting place anyway.
Yeah, it would seem that might be difficult. Continuity of awareness. And
what you want is continuity of awareness, exactly. Ngang kyong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sustaining.
Yeah.
You are brilliant. Thank you for spending time with us. Really appreciate it. I know everyone appreciates it. It's really a treasure for us to have you here.
I thank the audience and glad to be here. We should do something else sometime. It'd be fun.
Definitely. Please come again.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Professor John Dunne.
Thank you.
Now, generally, people consider religion, consider something based on faith. But Indian tradition, including non-Buddhist theory, all very much emphasis on reasoning.
But the vision behind this special anthology that was conceived by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And the aim of His Holiness for this series is to create a platform and a medium through which the great insights and knowledge of the Indian Buddhist masters, particularly of the Nalanda tradition, can be shared more broadly. conclusion, just as His Holiness writes at the end of his introduction to Volume 1, I quote, "I pray that these volumes become a source of great benefit to many people," end of quote. We hope that this course will be a source of benefit and joy to many people.